Well, welcome to this edition of Gibowr, which means courageous and confident, even capable man. Of course, the most Gibowr of all men who have ever lived is Dowd David, God's beloved son, his chosen one, our Messiah and King, even our Savior. I'm laughing because we've had quite the episode here preceding this program with our favorite fur faces, our dogs, Kara being the youngest. We then have Wookie as the male between the two girls. Here is indeed Kara, and of course Asher as the senior lady of the group. And so it has been provocative as we now see if whether or not Kara is going to eat my plant. No problem. It's an easy show to do. You can see behind me, we do have a new addition here to our set. It will be framed and appropriately positioned in a new location when it finds its home, but it's home right here for now. This is a painting of the Carmel coast. It is the old gnarled tree that sits on the bluffs before the sea in the far western part of the United States, in Carmel, one of my favorite places on the planet. I think its natural beauty is extraordinary. It was painted by the co-host of the evening show, the Family Hour program. That individual, of course, is a favorite to many. He is Kirk, and Kirk Miller is a phenomenal artist. We have been friends now for 20 years. And he painted that picture, and I lost in an argument to him, actually to his wife, on where it should be hung. I had encouraged that it be hung in his studio so that when we do the family hour, it would be behind him and I could enjoy it sitting there framed behind him. But his wife was quick to remind all of us that Kirk is exceedingly well hung all throughout their house, having painted many pictures, of course, was the reason that she would say that. And I lost the argument at that point. I did not have a retort for that. Now, as we study this particular prophecy that we are returning to here, we'll find that my king, Dowd, he was much better at the comebacks than I was. So I'll have to learn from him going forward. I would appreciate it if you don't knock down the little tree here that is. That's all right, Wookie. I mean, Kara, you're doing fine. It's not causing a problem at all. Anyway, that's why that wonderful picture is there, and it became really timely because in the roles that Yahweh has cast for me, I am more than anything a tree. As we have learned, and I will soon share, we'll begin a new program here shortly, maybe as soon as tomorrow, on what actually transpired in the garden. What you're going to discover is that the tree of knowledge, it is the Dayath, is identical to the Choder. So as both Dowd and the 14th Mashal word picture, which is a proverb, and in 11th chapter of Isaiah, Yashayah, there's a presentation of the Choder. And as it turns out, the Choder, everything associated with him directly identifies that individual with the seven spirits of Yahweh with this tree, the Dayath. So it's appropriate to be shown as this massive tree that clings to the sea, because the sea is a symbol of Goy, of Gentiles, and in this particular role, I'm going to call the observant foreigner, the man from Edom. And it all comes together in the story of the garden. So it's going to be a marvelous presentation. And there we see this gnarly old tree. I might look ever so slightly more weather-beaten than it. But, you know, that's the nice thing about weather-beaten trees is that you know that, in fact, they are they're here to stay. They're deeply rooted. They're exceedingly effective in maintaining their presence through all manner of storms. So here we are in this presentation with a new addition to our studio. And there is Rich, who is making it all possible here for us, as well as Miss Cuteness here. Yes, you are adorable. So we're returning to what had happened, and this is a rather profoundly important statement, and it reads, "Therefore, they Aaron the ark as a means to behold the harvest of Yahuwah, dwelt and remained, and the bereth home of Obed-Edom, of the one doing the work by serving from Edom at the Gitti, the winepress, and it was there for 3 months, while Yahweh blessed and commended Obed-Edom, the one doing the work while serving from Edom, in addition to all of his family and every aspect of his home and household." Shamuw'el, listen to him. 2 Samuel 6:11. Oh, there's so much here to unpack that is germane to God's story. First, the Ark of the Covenant, which is what is being discussed here, is probably the most interesting artifact in history of the world. You're probably familiar with the Indiana Jones and the search for the Ark, the quest for the Ark, and it is actually right now in a cavern that was carved out specifically for it, so that it could be kept out of the clutches of those who had come to plunder Israel, beginning with the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, and the Romans. And it has been protected by a malach ever since it was taken off to this place, so that it would not be stolen, and so that the original Ark of the Covenant would be available as we make our way through the events of the last days, because it is required for several purposes. One is, inside of the Ark are the original tablets of stone that Yahweh etched with his own hand, and they are exceedingly relevant for our time. And I'm going to explain the nature of those in an upcoming program, where we're going to go right through what God said on those tablets of stone, because they are essential for our understanding. Most people are clueless to what they actually reveal. For example, they don't speak of a Lord, they speak of Yahweh. They don't speak of being controlled or of laws, or even of commandments, but of God actually liberating us so that we can live independent and full lives, completely emancipated from religion and politics. And that the second of the three statements is devoted to God telling us, don't be religious. Religion is the very thing that will corrupt your children and that will kill you. And it's the reason why there are very few. Thank you, she was highly desirous of being with you. All right, so that there are very few people that will benefit from the covenant, and those will be the most observant individuals. And then it moves from there into a statement that says there is no forgiveness for negating the importance of Yahweh's name, Yahweh. So it then on the second tablet, we have some instructions as to how to live our lives in this world. But we'll go through that in an upcoming program. So number one, the Ark of the Covenant has the 10 statements in stone, which are going to be particularly important as we move forward in time, because Yahweh is going to lift them above the two witnesses to negate the claims that will be made by the corporeal manifestation of Ha-Satan as we move forward to the conclusion of, in the last 3.5 years of the time of Israel's troubles. The second reason that Ark is important is it is the Ark of the Covenant. And so it symbolizes the very promises that God has made to his people. And the covenant is a family, and God is promising that when we come to understand and accept the 5 conditions of the covenant, and we receive the benefits of the covenant through our acknowledgement of what Yahweh and Dowd have done to fulfill the spring Mikre, particularly Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, that we are to receive its benefits. And so that's one of the things that this Ark of the Covenant represents. The next thing that it represents is unknown to many, but it is Dowd's throne. It is literally that throne which Yahweh says in the 89th Mizmor will be returning with him and will be as brilliant as the sun. And so the mercy seat, the top of the Ark of the Covenant, is actually a seat, and it serves as the very throne of our returning king, who is Dowd David, our Messiah, the chosen one of God, the very firstborn son of God, according to God, of course. And lastly, that covenant, this Ark of the Covenant, has to be presented correctly on top of Mount Moriah, which is where it was left by Obed-Edom, who is an essential player in this story. The very person who was just introduced here. Obed-Edom was responsible for and will be responsible for the return of the Ark of the Covenant to under the tent of the restoring witness on Mount Moriah at the conclusion of the time of Israel's troubles, so that the blood of the bull that is sacrificed on Teruah 10 days later can be sprinkled upon this ark, so that we can certify the restoration and the reconciliation of the mortal remnant of Yisra'el in accordance with the Torah's instructions on Yom Kippurim. That is the very instruction of Yahweh, and it will be fulfilled exactly as it was written. And therefore, this is why we find Obed-Edom repositioning the Ark of Yahweh under the tent of the restoring witness on the Temple Mount, and why God introduced him to us in this story. Because up to this point, if you recall the last two programs we have done on this topic, we found that a bull was pulling the Ark of the Covenant across a threshing floor, and that bull represented the payment that would be made for the indebtedness of the religiosity of the final remnant of Yisrael. And when the bull was performing as Yahweh intended, we had a man who became a feminine influencer that tried to interfere with that story. And God struck that person dead. And what Dowd did in response is to have a conniption fit. He did not appreciate God upending this whole procession where he had organized some 30,000 people from Yisra'el to be witnessing his return of the Ark of the Covenant. But when Dowd responded improperly to the procession, Yahweh said, okay, there's a timeout. For 3 months, we're going to have a timeout. And over that 3 months, I think my son's going to figure it out. I think he's going to understand why the bull was positioning it, because it will be the bull on Teruah that will make the sacrifice and provide the blood to anoint the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant on Kippurim, as is prescribed in the Torah. And that it will be Dowd who is returning as the high priest to do so. So God was presenting what was going to happen prophetically. A man turned into a female influencer, got in the way. God says, no, you're not going to do that. I want to show you my response to anyone who interferes with my plans. That person was killed. And as I said, Dowd didn't understand it initially. So when Dowd refused to proceed with a way to bring the ark into Jerusalem and position it on the Temple Mount, God said, well, we're going to have a little time out, and I'm going to take the ark and going to have it in the home of Obed-Edom, whom is going to be blessed as a result of this. Obed-Edom is, as we have learned, the man from Edom, that Yashayah, Isaiah, is very clear to announce saves many in the end. So, therefore, the ark, the Aaron, as a means to behold the harvest of Yahweh, dwelt and remained for a while in the Be'eth, in the home of Obed-Edom, the one doing the work by serving from Edom. Now, he is from Hagati, the winepress, as we learn, because in Yashayah's prophecy, the man from Edom goes right into that winepress, Hagati, with the great prophet. And so that's why we have a tie-in in this case. Obed is the Hebrew word for work. It's abed is the verbal form, but it's written identically to Obed. Edom is one letter removed from Adam, man, and from Adamah, this bloody red man of the earth. The letter that is added to Adam, the man, humankind, to form Edom is a Wah. It is also in Esau's name, and this person is symbolic of Esau, because Esau was the son of Yishak, the firstborn son of Yishak, who was cheated out of his inheritance by his mother, and as a result, his inheritance is going to be restored, just as the family of the covenant is restored. That's the reason why that name. So the one letter that is differentiated, because Adam, as in Edom and Adam, would represent a observant individual, the eye, recognizing the doorway, the deleth here, to life, and is what is being conveyed in this process. And so with the M, it is water that completes the name, and the difference between Adam and Edom is that there is a wall, and it's used to enlarge the tent of the restoring witness and to secure that shelter that will be where the Ark of the Covenant will be placed. But it also is something that is driven into the earth, and in so doing, it releases the waters, the mem at the end of the name, such that they are free to flow and cleanse the mortal remnant of Yisra'el. So it's a lot in that particular name. And the winepress just reminds us that all of this is possible because of what Dowd did on Passover, where the blood of the lamb is smeared on the doorway to life, symbolic of the wine. It would remain there 3 months. 3 months is signifying the 3 epochs of human history out of the garden and returning to the garden, as well as the 3 days that represent Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, as well as the fall Mikre, Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. The 3 epochs of humanity apart from the garden are from year 0, when we are ousted from the garden, which God actually caused the fall, as we have discussed, to the time that the narrative exists to explain how we're going to return through the covenant, is 2,000 years or 50 Yobel. And so we go from year 0 Yah to year 1968 BCE, which is when Abraham and Yishak went up Mount Moriah to serve as a dress rehearsal, a harbinger, if you will, for the fulfillment of Passover, where Yahweh said that he would supply the lamb. 40 Abel thereafter, or 2,000 years after 1968 BCE, is 33 CE. And in 33 CE is when Dowd, as the Son of God, served as the Passover lamb and fulfilled Chag Matzah in year 4000 Yah. Then 40 Yobel from that time, or another 2,000 years from 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, is year 6000 Yah, which is 2033, which is when the man from Edom will serve as the Adamah Parah, this bloody red man from the earth who is so productive as a bull and will offer his life for the benefit of the remnant of Yisra'el, and to serve as the one who, as the bull again, positions the Ark of the Covenant for its proper place. So there's a lot being conveyed here, many, many layers to God's story. So therefore, the Aaron, the Ark, as a means to behold the harvest of Yahweh, dwelt and remained in the Beyeth, the home of Obed Edom, the one doing the work by serving from Edom at the Geti, the winepress, 3 months. While Yahweh blessed and commended, Yahweh extolled the appropriateness of and the usefulness of diminishing an aspect of himself and his nature to meet with and to uplift Obed Edom, the one doing the work while serving from Edom, in addition to all of his family and every aspect of his home and household. All right, so the 3 months could well be symbolic, as I've said, of the 3,000 years, well, actually just kind of a different perspective, the 3,000 years between our ouster from the garden and Dowd's life here at this time with the Ark of the Covenant as he's bringing it into Jerusalem for the first time. And then 3,000 years from that moment to Dowd returns to anoint the Ark of the Covenant on Gibowr. And it could be that he's splitting that time, and that's why we have the reference to 3,000, in addition to the 2 other references I've already shared with you. So it is symbolic also of the 3.5 months, if you will, between Shamuw'el and Teruah each year, from the time that we celebrate Shamuw'el to the time that we celebrate Teruah, which is the time the beginning of Israel's troubles, to the time that the 2 witnesses arrive and the time of the troubles finally end. It's a same period of time. So that is an interesting application of the 3.5 years. And Elia and Yada will serve as the witnesses for this amount of time, 3 years, fulfilling the promise that Yah has made regarding them. And this will also lead directly to the fulfillment of Chag Sukkah and the 3 times each year that we're asked to meet with Yahweh. Chag Matzah, Shamuw'el, and Chag Sukkah. So lots of references here, and I think all of them likely apply. And as I have shared, the 3 epochs between our removal and our reentry into the garden, and even the 30 years that Yahweh will serve as the bull prior to Dowd anointing the Ark of the Covenant, which is 2001 to 2033, less the 2.5 years from the harvest on Shamuw'el to his return. While all of these are likely true and insightful, as I say, there's lots of layers to God's story. The most likely scenario is that Dowd tried and failed to remove the ark during Shamuw'el, only to return and be successful during Teruah. And this is, I think, symbolic of all of this, that it was during Shamuw'el that Dowd tried to showcase the nature of the harvest that was proclaimed by Shamuw'el and the Ark of the Aaron itself, and to move it at that time. It ended in disaster when Dowd did not understand why God eliminated the man who tried to take control of the process and to direct away from what the bull was doing. And so 3 months later, we're at Teruah, which is the appropriate time. So by way of a hint, should you want to be blessed and commended by Yahweh, well, do something that God values. And this was the case with Obed-Edom. He was doing something God wanted done, and so God responded in kind and treated him exceedingly well, as in addition to his whole family. And of course, Obed is spelled identically to the verb abad, which means to work, to labor, to serve. This also means that Yahweh is committed to working through people, but more than this. As I will prove and have already suggested, the reason that Yahweh caused the fall of man back in the garden is that Adam was a deadbeat. He didn't work. He was conceived first and foremost to work with Yahweh in the garden, which means that the garden could be made better than it was if they collaborated. It could be perfected. Their home could be enhanced if they collaborated and worked together. But there is no indication that Adam did anything, and all the clues that Yahweh provides suggest that Adam was listless. He felt entitled, and he did not work with Yahweh. And so for man to be restored into fellowship with God, for man to earn God's trust such that he can be relied upon if emancipated from this planet and able to explore the universe with Yahweh and move out of 3 dimensions into 4, 5, 6, and 7 dimensions, we're going to have to be industrious. We're going to have to learn from God, and we're going to have to prove that we're willing to work, that we're willing to enhance our situation through effort. And so that is why the man is named Obed-Edom. He was willing to work. And that is essential to our return to the garden. You do not return to the garden unless you are also able, willing to work, to make a contribution to God's story and to his family, to show that you have the character and the drive to contribute, to engage, to act appropriately. And so that's a huge part of what all of this story is telling us. So even more revealing, as I have shared, Edom is from Adam, revealing that this is a ruddy red man and that God is going to put him to work to properly position the Ark of the Covenant. And that's just the beginning, because Edom constitutes the descendants of Esau, Jacob's twin brother, who was disinherited and cheated out of his birthright. Symbolically, then, a man from Edom is bringing the fractured family of Yisra'el back together in the end. God's a great storyteller. Again, many layers to his story. You can look at the mundane and the simplistic and just rely on existing translations and say, well, that's a nice story. Or you can actually get into it and make the necessary connections to understand all that God is conveying, where the narrative literally becomes alive, where a historic portrait of something that happened in time becomes exceedingly relevant prophetically to our time and what's going to endure, what we're going to endure over the next 8 years. So here we recognize that Dowd was inspired by Yahweh's Ruach Spirit, such that he became the most prolific of prophets. And yet, even so, on this day, he was wrong. And what a marvelous insight into this whole process, because God's not expecting everything to be perfect. Again, there would be no reason to work in the Gan Eden if the Gan Eden was perfect. How could you improve perfect, right? Our goal was to work collaboratively to make it more perfect, to move it in the direction of even better than it was. And the same thing is true with Dowd. He became a prophet and was inspired by the Spirit of Yahweh to think things through and to learn and to become better. And by admitting that he was wrong and learning from it and rising above it, he also showed that he could grow, that he was trustworthy, that he could be relied upon, that the next time that he stumbled, he would be someone who God could rely upon, getting up and not wallowing in his misery and learning from it and showing others the best process to be productive and useful and constructive in life. And so, while the information was all there for Dowd to make the right conclusion regarding the Aaron and the Bakar, the bull and the ark, he just missed it. At least he missed it initially. And that is important because there are also times when Moshe was wrong. And according to Yahweh, he was the greatest of the prophets. This means that we don't have to be perfect to speak for Yahweh, even to serve as a prophet, just willing to listen to Yahweh and to learn from him, and then change when we know better. We just have to get this false notion of perfect out of our minds. Even when God told Dowd and told Moshe, inspired them to say certain words, the communication of those words could never be perfect. The moment you go from the spoken word to the written word, you leave all of the nuances and the tone and the whole cadence of the presentation out of them, because the written word can't express any of that. And yet by the written word, you made the word more enduring and our access to it more accurate today, but it still doesn't convey the fullness of it, which means it is incomplete. And as incomplete, it is imperfect in that regard. And it's just exceedingly good. But this, again, perfect is just too much of a stretch. And then you have the issue of nothing is ever conveyed in writing exactly as it once was. Scribes make errors, the difference between, for example, the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Masoretic text is about 15%. Now, you can go back and make many corrections because we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it's important to know that that is the case. So, an important lesson is being taught here. So, progress in this regard is brought to us through the hopeful stem, which, when applied to Nagad, the counterpart delivering the message, left nothing to chance. So therefore, the testimony reads, then without any chance of denial or of ambiguity, the news, the information regarding the counterpart was reported such that it would be dealt with and be compelling, assuring that this information regarding the witness was made conspicuous straight away regarding the stand-in, Nagad, to the king, to Dowd, to convey that Yahweh has blessed and has commended, has uplifted, has supported, has extolled, has Barak, the family, the home, the household of Obed-Edom, the one doing this work from Edom, as well as everything associated with him, all for the benefit of the relationship and to show the way with regard to and for the sake of even the purpose associated with the very ark of the Almighty. Therefore, Dowd went by walking to bring up the Aaron, the ark, as a means to behold a harvest of God from the home of Obed-Edom, the one doing the work, serving from Edom, to the city of Dowd, with great pleasure, joy, and delight. 2 Samuel 6:12. Once again, so much of this is both prior and future history. The first aspect of this that is just so interesting is Nagad, when written in the hopeful, imperfect, third person, masculine, singular. The hopeful stem conveys all of those nuances along with the imperfect conjugation. That this was all about God making sure that there was no chance of ambiguity, no chance of denial, and that the news regarding this counterpart, which is a part of the conveyance of Nagad, and Obed-Edom is Dowd's counterpart. He is the lesser luminary, as Dowd is the greater luminary. He is the king's herald. So he is Dowd's counterpart. He is the tree of knowledge, while Dowd is the tree of lives. They are counterparts to one another. And so it was all reported such that Dowd would be in a position to deal with it. And God conveyed it in a compelling way, assuring that this information regarding the witness, Obed-Edom, was made conspicuous straight away regarding the stand-in, such that this was revealed to King Dowd. And all to convey that Yahweh had commended, he had uplifted, he had supported, he had extolled, he had exclaimed the appropriateness and the usefulness of the family and the home and the household of Obed-Edom. Obed-Edom is essential to God's story. He is the man from Edom that saves many in Yashayah 63. He is one of the more important characters in the prophetic timeline, then and now. And he was then associated with Dowd. He will then be associated with Dowd going forward again. He is the one who ushers in Dowd's arrival. He's the one who assures that the Ark of the Covenant is properly presented for the king when he returns. And he is even going back further in time as the one doing the work from Edom, and therefore related to Esau, is the one reconciling the fractured family relationship and restoring the inheritance. And the inheritance really of the firstborn, who, according to God, is also Dowd. So everything associated with him was all for the benefit of the relationship and with regard to the Ark of the Almighty. Obed-Edom's work serves to show the way to receive the benefits of the relationship and to embrace the greatest joy in life. And this is accomplished by way of the Ark of the Covenant and its ultimate positioning with David upon the king's return, as he anoints it with the blood of the bull to signify the reconciliation of the mortal remnant of Yisra'el. And so now Dowd saying, all right, I get it. I understand exactly what's going on here and why we moved from the bull to Obed-Edom, because the bull is Obed-Edom and Obed-Edom is the bull. They're coterminous thoughts, and it is the bull as Obed-Edom that is going to be sacrificed on Teruah to enable Dowd as the high priest to anoint the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant and affirm the reconciliation by way of the Torah. And this is all to facilitate the ultimate harvest on Teruah. And that is when this now is taking place. So we have all of this transpiring, going from the home of Obed-Edom to the home of Dowd, the very city of Dowd. And now our king, he's joyful and delighted. So why would our king be joyful and delighted? God has facilitated the repositioning of the Ark of the Covenant, and our king can enjoy the process. This is very much just like the whole concept of what God has in mind. God wants to restore his relationship with man once man has demonstrated that he is willing to obey, to work, to restore the broken family, Edom, and that he understands the value of the covenant and of the great sacrifice that Dowd has accomplished to bring us back together. And when that transpires, then these two men, Obed-Edom as the Bakar and Dowd as the very Lamb and Ram of God, are going to reunite in year 6000 Yah, 2033 on Kippurim, the day of reuniting, the day of reconciliations. And Dowd is excited about that. And he is now able to relax, to enjoy himself. So the message regarding the witness was revealed to Dowd in no uncertain terms, all to correct his previous mistake. Now aware of the role of the bull, designated now as Obed-Edom, and the role he himself as the Messiah and king would play relocating the ark in time for the harvest, Dowd learned his lesson and he was ready to move on, thrilled that he had discovered something both prophetic and, of course, profound. Now, there is no sulking around. There's no, woe is me, I'm so embarrassed, I was wrong. Oh my God, will you accept my apology? I want to repent, God. No, none of that. Dowd went from making a mistake as God was conveying what he wanted to do, the way he was going to accomplish it, and Dowd being sulky and wrong, to, here, Dowd, here's the answer in no uncertain terms. And Dowd said, oh, well, now that you explained it, this is great. Dowd didn't have to apologize. Dowd didn't have to sulk. There was no repentance. Oh, woe is me for having been wrong. He went from being wrong to being right and was thrilled at having the opportunity to go from being wrong to being right. Now, we have a whole group of people out there that want to pretend that somebody who is wrong about God on some detail somewhere, like Dowd was here, can't ever be right in terms of serving as a prophet or a witness or a key player in God's story. God only would have perfect. Well, that's exactly the opposite of what's being conveyed here. And rather than having been wrong on some detail, proving that you can't be trusted, it proves exactly the opposite when you correct it. It proves that you can be trusted. It proves that you are able to learn. It shows that you're able to grow, that once you fall, you can stand back up and be better for it, demonstrating that you have character, demonstrating that God can trust you. It is the very currency of trust to correct something that is wrong than this notion that everything must be perfect. As I say, lollipops and tulips. I'm sorry, that's not the way God works. It's not the way we grow. It's not the way we accomplish anything in life. It's not the way we hone our character. It's not the way we become interesting. And Dowd is a living example of this very thing. So having the opportunity to respond appropriately from Dowd's perspective and from mine, it's a cause for celebration, not lamenting. It endeared Dowd to God. It enhanced the king's credibility with, particularly with their rational and observant, because of how rare it is that someone in a prominent position can admit a mistake in judgment and then correct the record. It's marvelous. And that's what is being celebrated here. And you ought not miss it, because there's a lot of naysayers out there that say exactly the opposite. They're just dunderheads. They don't understand. And that the primary condemnation of me working with Yahweh is, as I have just said, that I, like Dowd, am learning on the job. And that As such, I'm willing to adapt conclusions as the evidence direct, just as was the case here. That those who have come to trust what I've discovered and shared ought to be reassured. You ought to find this exceedingly comforting, because I'm doing as Dowd and Moshe have done before me. This is Yahweh's standard operating procedure, and it's one that will continue to guide our steps throughout eternity. God wants to spend eternity with those who can learn, who can grow, who, if they make a mistake, can admit they made a mistake. They can get up and go again. It shows that they're reliable. It shows that they're teachable. It shows that they have character. So while there's no one as beloved as Dowd by God, it's rather obvious that Yahweh holds Obed-Edom very, very close to his heart. There are not a lot of people where God goes this far to say twice over that he barak, that he extolled, that he esteemed. And that's important, because if you do something the way God wants it done, as thoroughly and as completely as you are capable, God takes notice and he shares credit. Now, is the whole introduction of Obed-Edom scripted by God? Absolutely. Did God enable all of this benefits to Obed-Edom to draw attention to his role? Sure. Is God miraculously going to bring Obed-Edom back? Yep. Did God figure out a way to make Obed-Edom and the bull one and the same? Yes, he did. Is he going to give Obed-Edom as the BakarBull the very opportunity to clear the Temple Mount so that the Islamic scars are gone, and so that he can reestablish the tent of the restoring witness in its proper place? You betcha. Is then Yahweh going to return the Ark of the Covenant so that it sits within that tent of the restoring witness, such that everything that needs to take place between Teruah and Kippurim that makes our return to the garden on Sukkah possible? Is he orchestrating all of that with his Malach doing the work? You betcha. So is Yahweh the one who is responsible? Yes. Is he working through people like myself as Obed-Edom, this bull, through Dowd as the ram, and the man that's going to orchestrate all of this, be the voice of God as all of this is taking place, is Elia, the goat. And as my wife says, there's something that you ought to know about why God chose a lamb, a goat, and a bull. Throughout human history, they've been the most valuable creatures to man. And they're going to be exceedingly valuable. Have been and will be as we go forward in God's story. So Obed-Edom chose to do as God had asked, and God acclaimed him for it. He was appreciative. He was supportive. The very purpose of the Ark of the Covenant will be fulfilled as intended in collaboration with the bull, the goat, and the ram, and it will transpire on Teruah, leading to Kippurim. And as a result, our king will celebrate again in the city bearing his name. This is future history. But let's not miss the fact that Yahweh is commending everything and everyone associated with the man who ultimately serves to reconcile the family by his service to Dowd. And indeed, all of the men and women who have devoted themselves to sharing this message on Yahweh's behalf and for the benefit of his people are blessed, not just now, but forevermore. This is a job that pays dividends. I would strongly recommend it. So in the end, it is the work of the bloody red man from Edom, who is east as a shore, who is observant, and who will fulfill Yom Teruah. He's cast, I should say, as a shore, as an observant individual. And he is going to fulfill Yom Teruah, the day of the herald, such that the mercy seat of the ark is ready to be anointed by Dowd, of course, with this bull's blood. And it will take place during the 6th Mow'ed, Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations. This is the 6th of 7 steps, which take us from the world of men to the very realm of God. And it came to be that those who were carrying the ark, the Aaron, the ark to behold being harvested of Yahweh, had stepped 6 strides. And then he offered a sacrifice, ashore, an observant bull. We're going to bring together the concept of the Bakar and of the Nakar, the observant bull, who had traveled a great distance to be seen, to be beheld, to be regarded. Even 7 par bulls and AL rams. There are 7 Mow'ed Mikre. There are 7 spirits of Yahweh. And there is a bull and there is a ram who are responsible for fulfilling them by doing as Yahweh has requested. This is Shamuw'el. This is Listen to Him, the 2nd book bearing the Judges and Prophets name, the 6th chapter. It comes from the 13th statement. So when it came to be that they had taken 6 steps, carrying the ark, bearing those who would be harvested of Yahweh, then he offered the sacrifice of the shore, the observant bull. Of course, that had traveled with it, because the bull and Obed-Edom are the same individual. And because there would be 7 steps overall, there were 7 par and AL rams. Now you will note with Obed-Edom managing the transportation of the Aaron into Jerusalem, that he made sure that it was carried as intended, which would have been with 8 men and 2 long poles. Further, the one assisting the king knew when to stop, to recognize the ensuing contribution and sacrifice of the shore observant bull. Now, the reason that I say 8, there are 2 poles and 2 ends of each of those poles that sit through loops on the left and right side. Actually, they go through the back and front of the mercy seat and the Ark of the Covenant. And there are 2 men that will carry those poles, lift those poles forward and aft as they are moving. So there are 2 on each pole in front, 2 on each pole in back. 4 plus 4 is 8. The reason that's important, and I bring it up to you, is that on Shamuw'el, Teruah, and Kippurim, we're specifically told of these 8 individuals and the ongoing role that these 8 individuals play beside the man named Obed-Edom, this bull, and educating and preparing the mortal remnant of Yisra'el, and of being central to coordinating the harvest that takes place on Shamuw'el and on Teruah. So it's important to know that there's synergy between these stories and that there is a level of parallelism as well. So we also know that the shore, the observant bull, is in fact a blend between Bakar and Nakar, the observant foreigner and the observant bull. Even realizing that there would be a par and a al. Par is the Hebrew word, also another Hebrew word for bull. It is shaped by the ending, making it productive and fruitful. And here we see it in conjunction with the al, that would represent Dowd, as he served as the Passover lamb. As a result of having Obed-Edom be a bloody red man, working for him to reconcile the family through the proper positioning of the Aaron ark for the harvest, and as this bloody red man providing the blood to anoint the mercy seat on Kippurim, Dowd could now relax. He could enjoy the proceeding. This is another harbinger of things to come. It's exactly how Dowd is going to return, because the stage has been set for him. He's returning as a king should, with all of the king's men doing exactly what Yahweh would have done, so that the world is now perfect for him. It's in fact because of what transpires on Teruah. All enemies of Israel will be exterminated and incinerated. All traces of religion and of politics and of militarism will be gone. The entire earth will be restored to the conditions of Eden. Then we're going to have 2 chariots full of individuals, one Goyim, one Yehudim, that are going to be brought into Jerusalem on Teruah, that will be purged of their religiosity so that they're prepared to enter Eden, our return to Eden on Sukkah, and prior to that to receive Dowd as he returns with Yahweh. All of this is being prepared in advance of the king's return, as is the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah on behalf of the adulterous woman, because Dowd wants his bride back, and she will be prepared for the wedding. And this is a huge part of the story. That's why Sukkah is called Sukkah. There will be a wedding booth established for the king as he marries the most beautiful and perfect woman in the world upon his return, all prepared for him by the men and women serving in Yahweh's interests and in the king's interest. Now, speaking of such an occasion, Dowd's return will transpire on October 2nd, 2033, at sundown, 6:22 p.m. in the city of Dowd, and it will be the most celebrated event in universal history. Moreover, what follows is yet another affirmation that I was correct in picturing Dowd dressing as the high priest on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations, to anoint the Kippur at the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, in observance of the Torah's instructions. Listen. And Dowd danced joyously and rhythmically with total effort before the presence of Yahweh. Dowd was wearing the special linen ephod, the priestly garment. The ephod is gold, blue, and purple, scarlet, fine linen apparel for the high priest with the onyx stones. Shamuw'el, listen to him. 2 Samuel 6:14. Now, there's just no way to overemphasize the value of the foregoing statement. It presents Dowd, the king, celebrating his return to Jerusalem before the Aaron, the Ark of the Covenant, following the sacrifice of the shore observant bull on Teruah, the day of the herald, supported by Obed-Edom, the man serving him, by reconciling the relationship in context of the fulfillment of the Mikre, while he is dressed in the ephod, the princely apparel. If connecting clues to solve the puzzle appeals to you, then you're smiling from ear to ear, because Yahweh has opened the box and set all the important pieces out right before you, face up, and said, oh, by the way, this is how they fit together. Now you know exactly what's going to happen, where, when, by whom, and why. Isn't that marvelous? And yet, I dare say we're the first to actually share all these things with you, even though all of these clues, all the pieces to this puzzle have been available for 3,000 years. Now, admittedly, it took me 24 years to figure all this out and to go from ignorant, probably a decent term, to yada, to knowing, and then to be in understanding. So to appreciate where we have come, this is an important part of this journey. This serves to validate what has become the central thread of YadaYahowah, in arguably the most accurate presentation and important commentary on God's testimony pursuant to what has happened and will occur that has ever been written. Knowing the succession of events, and particularly the role Obed-Edom, the bloody red man, working to reconcile the family as the observant bull, will play on Yom Teruah, the day of the herald, to facilitate the king's triumphant arrival before the remnant of Yisra'el, the Son of God, reveals. So, Dowd and the entire Bereth, Yisra'el, entire household of those engaging and enduring with God, ascended with Aaron, the ark to behold being harvested of Yahweh, on Teruah, blasting the message of the herald with the cold voice of the shofar trumpet. 2 Samuel 6:15. So, back a while ago when I made the note that there were lots of ways to look at the 3 months that the Ark of the Covenant was in the home of Obed-Edom, I said, I think that all of the various layers that I have shared with you are true, but one thing I am assured of is that Dowd tried to bring the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem on the upcoming harvest, Shabuw'el. And that, he got sidetracked with the man interfering with the work of the bull. And the reason that Ark didn't resume its journey the next day with Obed-Edom is because the next occasion was Teruah. And here we find that conclusion was correct. That now Dowd and the entire family and household of Yisra'el was ascending up to Jerusalem, to the city of Dowd, and to the very Temple Mount of Moriah, with the ark to behold the harvest of Yahweh on Teruah. They were blasting the message of the herald, doing so with the very cold voice of the shofar trumpet, the voice of Yahweh, and the shofar trumpet of Yahweh, and the message of Obed-Edom, of the sure observant bull, of the very meaning of Teruah and what will take place on this date. They're all intertwined. God tells his story with metaphors and symbols that all coalesce to form this picture for your benefit. It is a marvelous story. And we're going to conclude this episode of Gibowr, because it's going to get even more interesting from here. But what a marvelous portrait God has painted. I hope you see yourselves in it. I hope you're encouraged and enlightened by it, because this is future history. Thank you for listening.